Listen to me. Sometimes what you call distance ain't distance at all. Sometimes it's a man trying to understand something he ain't never felt before. See, when a man starts falling deeper in love, it doesn't always look romantic. It looks confusing. He gets quiet. He pulls back a little. Not because he doesn't care, but because now it matters too much. You think he's ignoring you? No. He's thinking about you more than ever. He's analyzing every word, every moment, every possibility. Because now it's not just attraction anymore. It's attachment. A man who's fallen hard starts to feel pressure. Pressure to be better. Pressure to not mess it up. Pressure to become the man you deserve. And when a man feels that kind of pressure, sometimes he goes silent. Not to leave you, but to fix himself. See, love changes a man. Real love humbles him. It makes him question his habits, his direction, his purpose. And when he realizes you're not just another woman, you're the one who could change his life, that's when he slows down. He's not ignoring you. He's adjusting to loving you. Now, don't get it twisted. If a man doesn't care, he disappears. But if he cares deeply, he becomes intentional. He starts moving differently, thinking deeper, feeling stronger. And sometimes, he steps back, but not to walk away. He steps back to come back stronger. So before you assume the worst, ask yourself, is he gone or is he growing? Because a man who is falling in love isn't always loud about it. Sometimes he's silent because the feeling is too big for words. Silence doesn't always mean disinterest. And this is one of the biggest misunderstandings in modern relationships. When a man goes quiet, the first instinct for many people is to assume the worst, that he's losing interest, pulling away emotionally, or even entertaining someone else. But the truth is, silence can mean something much deeper, especially when real feelings are involved. Men are not always wired to express emotions the way women are. While some people feel closer by talking things through, many men feel overwhelmed when emotions become intense. Instead of speaking immediately, they step back to process what they're feeling. It's not because they don't care, it's because they care more than they expected to. That emotional intensity can be unfamiliar, even uncomfortable, as silence becomes their way of trying to understand it. When a man starts falling deeper in love, his thoughts become heavier. He begins to think about responsibility, the future, and whether he can truly meet the expectations that come with a serious relationship. Or this is not light thinking anymore. This is not casual attraction. This is the kind of thinking that makes him question himself. Am I ready for this? Can I handle this? What if I mess this up? Those questions don't always come out in words. They show up in silence. It's also important to understand that silence can be a form of emotional protection. When feelings grow stronger, the risk of getting hurt becomes real. A man who has fallen deeply may pull back not to hurt you, but to protect himself from moving too fast or becoming too vulnerable too quickly. Or he's trying to find balance between what he feels and what he's ready to handle. Another reason silence doesn't equal disinterest is because actions often speak louder than words. A man might not be texting all day or constantly expressing himself verbally, but he shows up in other ways. He checks on you. He makes time when it counts. He listens when you talk, and he stays consistent in your life. That consistency is a stronger indicator of his feelings than constant communication without depth. The problem happens when silence is misinterpreted. When you assume he's ignoring you, you may react with frustration, distance, or emotional pressure. That reaction can actually push him further into silence. Not because he wants to leave, but because he now feels misunderstood.
What started as him trying to process his feelings turns into a situation where he feels he can do it safely. This doesn't mean all silence is good. There is a difference between healthy emotional processing and complete neglect. The key is to look at the full picture. Is he still present in your life? Does he still show effort? Does he return even after pulling back? If the answer is yes, then his silence is likely not about losing interest. It's about handling emotions he hasn't fully learned how to express yet. Understanding this changes everything. Instead of reacting with fear, you respond with patience. Instead of assuming rejection, you allow space. And sometimes that space is exactly what allows him to come back more certain, more grounded, and more committed than before. So silence is not always the absence of love. Sometimes it's the moment where love is growing quietly, deeply, and in a way that words haven't yet caught up to. Men react differently to deep love, and understanding this can completely change how you interpret their behavior. When emotions become serious, many women expect a man to move closer, communicate more, and express his feelings openly. But for a lot of men, the opposite happens at first. Instead of leaning in, they pause. Instead of talking more, they think more. And instead of expressing everything, they try to make sense of what they're feeling internally. This difference is not about a lack of love, it's about a difference in emotional processing. When love is light and casual, a man is usually relaxed. He jokes more, communicates easily, and doesn't overthink things. But when his feelings deepen, the situation becomes more real to him. It's no longer just about enjoying your presence. It's about what you mean to his life. That shift can be overwhelming, especially if he's not used to experiencing love at that level. A man who is falling deeply in love often becomes more introspective. He starts asking himself serious questions. Where is this going? Can I see a future here? Am I ready to commit at this level? These are not small thoughts. They carry weight, responsibility, and sometimes even fear. Instead of expressing these questions out loud, many men choose to deal with them privately. That's why you may notice him becoming quieter or slightly distant, not because he's losing interest, but because he's trying to understand the depth of his own feelings. Another important factor is that men often associate love with responsibility. When a man realizes he truly cares about you, he doesn't just think about emotions. He thinks about his role in your life. He may start evaluating his finances, his stability, his goals, and whether he can provide the kind of future he believes you deserve. This pressure can cause him to slow down emotionally, not because he wants to step away, but because he wants to step up. At the same time, deep love can make a man feel vulnerable in a way he may not be used to. Vulnerability is not always easy for men to express. Many have been taught to stay strong and contrite, all and emotionally guarded. So when love begins to break down those walls, it can feel uncomfortable. Instead of immediately opening up, he may retreat slightly to regain a sense of control over his emotions. This is why his reaction might seem confusing. One moment, he's fully present, engaged, and affectionate. The next moment, he's quieter, more distant, or less expressive. To someone who doesn't understand this pattern, it can feel like mixed signals. But in reality, it's often a sign that his feelings are becoming more serious, not less. The key is to observe consistency over time rather than moment-to-moment behavior. A man who is reacting to deep love will still show up. He will still care, still make effort, and still be part of your life. His communication style might shift, but his presence won't disappear. That presence is what separates genuine emotional processing from actual disinterest. Understanding that men react differently to deep love helps you avoid unnecessary conflict. Instead of pushing him to express himself in a way that feels unnatural to him, you give him the space to come to clarity on his own. And when he does, his feelings are often stronger, more certain, and more intentional. In the end, love doesn't always look the same from both sides. Just because he doesn't react the way you expect doesn't mean he doesn't feel deeply. Sometimes it simply means he's experiencing something real and he's trying to handle it in the only way he knows how. Pressure increases when feelings get real, and this is something many people underestimate when it comes to relationships. In the early stages, everything feels easy. There's excitement, curiosity, and a sense of freedom because nothing is fully defined yet. A man can show up, enjoy your company, and express interest without feeling the weight of long-term expectations. But the moment his feelings deepen, everything changes internally. When a man realizes that you are no longer just someone he likes, but someone he truly cares about, pressure naturally begins to build. This pressure doesn't come from you alone. It comes from within him. He starts to see you differently. You're no longer temporary in his mind. You become significant. And with significance comes responsibility. He begins to think about what it means to keep you, not just attract you. Attraction is easy. It's fun, it's spontaneous, and it doesn't require deep emotional investment. But keeping someone you truly value requires consistency, effort, and growth. That realization can be intimidating. He starts asking himself questions like, can I really be the man she needs? Am I stable enough? Am I mature enough? What if I disappoint her? These thoughts create internal pressure that he may not openly express. This is where many misunderstandings happen. From the outside, it may look like he's pulling back or becoming less interested, but on the inside, he's dealing with a shift from casual emotions to something much more serious. He's no longer just thinking about the present moment, he's thinking about the future. And thinking about the future can make a man slow down, not speed up. Another layer of pressure comes from the fear of making mistakes. When a man doesn't care deeply, he's not overly concerned about messing things up. Or when he values you, every action feels more important. He becomes more cautious with his words, more aware of his behavior, and more concerned about how he shows up in the relationship. This caution can sometimes look like hesitation or distance, but is actually rooted in care. At the same time, society often places expectations on men to be providers, protectors, and problem solvers. Whether consciously or unconsciously, many men carry this mindset into relationships. So when his feelings grow stronger, he may start evaluating his life in practical terms. He might think about his career, finances, and overall direction. He wants to feel like he's in a position where he can offer you something solid, not just emotions. If he feels like he's not there yet, that can create even more pressure. This internal pressure can lead him to take a step back, not to leave the relationship, but to gather himself. He may need time to think, to plan, or to work on certain areas of his life. Unfortunately, this step back is often misunderstood as a loss of interest. In reality, it can be the opposite. The deeper his feelings, the more seriously he takes the situation. It's important to recognize that pressure in this context is not a bad thing. It's a sign that the relationship meant worse to him, It shows that he's not taking you lightly. However, how that pressure is handled makes all the difference. A man who is genuinely invested will not disappear completely. Even if he pulls back slightly, he will remain connected in some way. His actions will still show care, even if his communication changes. Understanding this allows you to respond with awareness instead of fear. Instead of assuming he's drifting away, you can see that he might be trying to step up in his own way. Giving him space to handle that pressure can actually strengthen the connection because it allows him to come back with more clarity and intention. When feelings become real, pressure is inevitable. But that pressure doesn't mean he's running away from love. Sometimes it means he's trying to rise to meet it. Emotional growth can look like distance. And this is where many relationships get tested the most. When someone starts changing internally, especially a man who is not used to dealing with deep emotions, it doesn't always look like progress on the outside. In fact, it can look like the opposite. It can look like he's becoming quieter, less expressive, or even slightly withdrawn. But what's really happening beneath the surface is far more important than what you see in the moment. When a man begins to grow emotionally, he is stepping into unfamiliar territory. Most men are not taught how to process complex feelings openly. They are often taught to stay strong, avoid vulnerability, and keep their emotions controlled. So when love starts to push him beyond that comfort zone, he has to figure things out in his own way. And that process often requires space. This space is not always about you. It's about him trying to understand himself. He may be reflecting on his past, thinking about his patterns, or recognizing areas where he needs to improve. That kind of self-awareness does. And that happens in constant conversation. It happens in quiet moments, in reflection, and sometimes in temporary distance. From your perspective, this distance can feel confusing or even painful. You might wonder why someone who cares about you would suddenly seem less available or less expressive. It can trigger doubts, fears, and the urge to seek reassurance. But emotional growth is not always loud or obvious. Sometimes it's silent, slow, and deeply internal. A man who is growing emotionally may start to reassess how he handles relationships. He might realize that he needs to communicate better, be more patient, or let go of habits that could damage something meaningful. But before he can show that growth outwardly, he has to work through it inwardly. That process can make him appear distant, even though he is actually becoming more aligned with what the relationship needs. Another reason emotional growth can look like distance is because it often involves breaking old patterns. If he's used to moving quickly, avoiding commitment, or staying emotionally detached, then falling deeply in love forces him to confront those tendencies. Changing those patterns is not instant. It requires effort, awareness, and sometimes stepping back to avoid repeating the same mistakes. It's also important to understand that growth takes energy. When someone is working on themselves, they may not have the same level of emotional availability at every moment. It doesn't mean they care less. It means they are investing energy into becoming better. And sometimes that investment requires temporary withdrawal from constant interaction. The key difference between unhealthy distance and growth-related distance is intention. A man who is simply losing interest will become inconsistent, unreliable, and disconnected over time. But a man who is growing will still maintain a level of presence. He may not be as expressive as before, but he won't completely disappear. There will still be effort, still be care, and still be a connection that remains intact. Understanding this can change how you respond. Instead of reacting with frustration or assuming the worst, you can allow space without losing your sense of security. That doesn't mean ignoring your own needs, but it does mean recognizing that not all distance is rejection. Sometimes it's preparation. Sometimes it's preparation. Emotional growth is not always comfortable, and it doesn't always look the way you expect. But when a man is willing to face himself to improve and to become better for the relationship, that process is valuable. Even if it comes with moments of silence or distance, it often leads to something stronger and more meaningful in the end. So what looks like distance on the surface may actually be transformation underneath. And if you can see that clearly, you won't mistake growth for loss.